Conversation about abuse and parenting styles. It all sparked from this recent article, Washington Post website, describing some abusive parenting styles that unfortunately are often handed down through families. But really the positive takeaway is how to break some of these cycles and how to break some of these tactics. So this morning, the journalist who actually wrote the story, Szczypinski, is with me this morning. You're based in Seattle. Good morning. So we're talking about abusive parenting styles. Would you kind of define that for us?
So it's broken down into two categories. It's really the physical, which is striking your child, any sort of spanking, and then sort of the less covered verbal, which is what a social psychologist I spoke with referred to as humiliation parenting, which is essentially breaking down a child's self-esteem by berating them in public, telling them that they're, somehow not worthy, etc.
So you think about these and you think if I suffered under them, I'd want to learn from it, not do this to my own kids.
Exactly.
But you say, unfortunately, they are passed down.
So anyone who has kids knows that they're little mirrors.
Yes.
And they copy everything that we do. So it's no surprise that when you're abused, either verbally or physically, you are going to grow up and possibly repeat those patterns. But a University of Washington study found that that actually extends further, that they observed the same patterns across 3 generations. So how we parent our children today could potentially affect the way our grandchildren parent their own kids 60, 70 years from now.
So what do we do about that? If there is abuse in our family at all, even if you're the one who didn't suffer it, maybe it's 2 generations above.
Right. It's a difficult question because for a lot of people, it's not as simple as saying, I'm just going to make different choices than my parents. Because what happens when you're exposed to prolonged abuse, your brain and your body change the way they respond to stress. And so even if you grow up and you get distance and you develop this safe and loving environment that perhaps you wanted, those physiological responses are going to be there still. So it's very important to recognize that it goes beyond the environment, and it's important to check in with yourself and understand that you need to think about those responses and perhaps seek help in that way.
So seeking help, checking in with yourself, what other tactics did you find could be helpful for people who want to break this cycle?
The first and most common thing is to resist the urge to say, my abuse is no big deal because I turned out fine. I think that's a very easy thing to do. And especially in cases where the abuser is still in the picture, grandparents, for example, who perhaps abused you as a child and now they're an adult, that's fairly common. So it's important to establish boundaries with that generation to say, I'm the parent, I'm going to be doing things differently, and you need to respect my parenting style going forward. And the final thing, as simple as it sounds, talking about it is so rare. We don't hear a lot about it. And what's funny is corporal punishment is not a thing of the past. In the piece, I cited a Harris poll, which found that 81% of parents today still believe that hitting their child is an acceptable form of punishment. So talking about it with a friend, a spouse, a therapist is really where those positive changes are going to come. And for parents, the choices we make for ourselves are ultimately the choices we make for our children.
I think this is such important information, but what I like the most is that it's hopeful that you can do this if you reach out for help.
There are millions of children every year. I think it was 8 million children who are reported abused every year. It's a very common thing, but not everyone is going to grow up to be an abuser. It's just a matter of making that cognizant choice as a parent to look at your child and say, this isn't going to happen again.
Szczypinski, this is such an important topic. Thank you for being here, helping our audience understand this. We appreciate it. More of your story on the Washington Post website, washingtonpost.com. Thank you very much. MJ, over to you.
Well, we're starting